talk about your favorite subject next, and that would be attitude. You know, I have a definition of attitude that I'm sure came from a lot of influence from you, but I define it as that state of mind through which you filter all information and make all decisions. How has speaking about attitude all of these years affected people's lives? How important is it?
I think, of course, that your attitude is the beginning point of all progress. But attitude towards you, attitude towards others, attitude towards your job, attitude towards your family. I mean, attitude encompasses all things, and it can be changed in an instant. Years ago, we were playing in a golf tournament out in Phoenix, Arizona. Weather was beautiful. The next day, as we headed home, it was raining and hailing and so forth. We got soaking wet trying to unload our clubs, and there was a delay. Computers were down. We got to the gate agent there where we were checking in, you know, and you're talking about a fellow who had had all the red licked off of his candy. I mean, he looked like the cruise director for the Titanic. He was catching it coming and going from all sides, and he was getting redder and redder and redder and angrier, you know, all the time. They blame him for the economy. They blame him for the weather. They blame him for the computer breakdowns. They blame him for everything. And when I got to him, you know, I said, "Well, how you doing?" He said, "Compared to who?" I said, compared to that person who doesn't have a job of any kind, compared to one who doesn't have a nice building to work in with nice clothes to wear and a future he can plan, compared to those people who live in lands where there's no freedom of speech or travel or those things or freedom of worship. I said, "How you doing?" Now, you're talking about a guy who had a huge change. He grinned so wide he could have eaten a banana sideways. I mean, it was just automatic. His man, "I'm doing wonderfully well, and thank you for reminding me." Well, the guy got so excited he moved us up to first class, which I thought was pretty good. Now, the point I want to make is, had his supervisor come by while he was having all those difficulties, his job might well have been in jeopardy. Had the supervisor come by 10 seconds after we got past him, and I noticed as we were walking down the gateway to the entrance to the plane that he was greeting people in a very pleasant manner. It had changed in that long. Now, so what we need to do is we need to clearly understand the difference between responding to something and reacting to something. React is negative, respond is positive. You get sick, go to the doctor. Doctor gives you a prescription, says, "See me tomorrow." You walk in the next day, the doctor shakes his head and says, "Oh, your body's reacting to the medicine." But if you get nervous, but if the doctor says, "Hey, it's working," your body's responding. So we need to understand, and one of my favorite little examples is if you're headed for work, minding your own business, and all of a sudden out of nowhere comes a car that cuts you off at the pass. You have to hit your brakes and you hit your horn and shake your fist, you know, and in so many words say, "I got your tag number, buddy, and when I see you out here again, it's going to be me and you." And then when you get to work, what do? You tell the first person you see about these crazy drivers, "Guy must have been drunk or something," you know, and you tell the second person and the third person. And in the meantime, the fellow who had committed the dastardly deed rides merrily along, unaware that you even exist. And yet he's completely in control of your performance, your attitude, maybe even your career. It's the ultimate of all the put-downs. So when something like that happens, just say, "Well, brother, if you're in that big a hurry, go ahead. I'm not going to risk my life to try to take over with you. And I'm certainly not going to get in a violent argument with you because some people carry guns." That's not smart. You respond, and over a period of time, you can build up an attitude reserve. Dr. Forrest Tennant is my source of this. He was the #1 drug authority in the country for years. He was the consultant for Texaco, consultant for the Justice Department, consultant for the National Football League. And he says that you can actually by listening to inspirational information, it floods your system with dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and so forth, and you're energized physiologically. They now know also, because the new high-tech mic enables them to take a microscope, enable them to take pictures of every blood cell. At the end of every cell, there is a little blister. And in that is dopamine, norepinephrine, over 200 neurotransmitters. Now, that won't keep you from getting knocked down, but it gives you the opportunity to get up a lot faster because the energy is there. The response is much faster. So that constant growth, listening and taking advantage of that attitude development which is there, is just a marvelous, marvelous example. The message is this: you don't drown by falling in water. You only drown if you stay there. You don't drown by you don't fail by getting knocked down. You only fail if you stay there. We can do something about it. Respond by building that emotional reserve, reading the good books, listening to the good messages, and so forth.
You know, you're talking about making a choice. You can choose to respond rather than react, and free yourself from being vulnerable to all the people out there that have issues and problems. It's an amazing way to live. You know, we look at people and we say that some see the glass half full, some see it half empty. Are they born that way, or is there something we can do to deliberately live our lives with a positive attitude?
Yeah, the psychologists say that half the people here in America are born that way, optimists, half are born pessimists. But the good news is that you can absolutely change. I have seen radical changes in literally hundreds and hundreds of lives, thousands of lives, over a period of time. And one of the things we point out is that we need to always be on the grow. Because, the well-educated person of today is unqualified for the education, for the world of tomorrow. We've got to keep that growth going.
I have to share a story with you. As a very young man, I learned to say great when somebody asked me how I was doing. And even if I wasn't doing that great, I found that I was just a little bit better by having said it and playing that through my life. But one evening, I was in an aircraft by myself in the middle of the night over the King Ranch, which is 1 million acres of dark. And the engine oil began to leak from my engine. And it started to cover my windshield, and I realized that I had 5-10 minutes of flight left with 30 minutes to any major airport. So I turned towards the beach. And as the oil sheened over my windshield and out across my windows, I found myself in a black box in the middle of the night with nothing to see, even if I could look out of the window. The engine oil finished leaking out. It exploded, and I was on fire. And because I had a positive mental attitude, I was able to walk away from that incident. And it's an actual fact that developing a positive mental attitude saved my life that day. Because as every decision had to be made, it was made from a thoughtful, stable, peaceful position. And of course, the greatest thing was I knew that if I died, my eternity was already assured, which freed me to not panic, but to thoughtfully make the decisions so that I'm sitting here with you today. So I don't know if anybody's ever told you that helping them to build that positive mental attitude saved their life, but
he definitely responded instead of reacting.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
That's correct.
A positive mental attitude definitely fuels our passion for whatever it is that drives us. And I know how passionate you are about everything you do. And in the short time I've been around Gary, I can sense his passion for what he does. Talk to us about passion, and for the viewers that are out there watching and say that might be involved in things that they're not passionate about, how can they get the courage to make the transformation and get involved in the things that they truly are passionate about in their heart that maybe they're not involved in today?
Well, Dave, let me say this, that you catch a glimpse of passion the first time you realize your own potential. I frequently use the example of why do we get so much more work done on the day before we go on vacation than we normally get done? Well, the answer is you planned it the night before, you accepted the responsibility, you tackled it with enthusiasm, and right down the list, you get more than twice as much work done. Now, the qualities that are involved in doing that are significant. There are success qualities all the way through. But when you think about it for a moment, if planning one day will have that big an impact, think what planning a life would mean in the life. And when you understand that you knew nothing on the day before vacation than you knew 24 hours earlier in all probability, but you simply used what you already knew in an organized manner. Now, when we recognize, develop, claim, and use, and do it every day, then what we've started to do is run our day by the clock, but our life with a vision. Now, in order for you to have that vision, I know you've heard me say that legal immigrants are 4 times as likely to become millionaires in America as the people who are born here. Now, one of the things that you two gentlemen have done is, and a lot of people in your own companies do not even realize this, that y'all have, in addition to your day job, you've also got sidelines. You're in the manufacturing business. You manufacture big frying pans. You might have heard the story. I know you have, as a matter of fact. Gentleman Jim Corbett, old heavyweight champion of the world, loved to fish. One morning doing his road work, he ran past a fisherman who was pulling in fish, some big, some little, but I mean, it was really a banner day. Then he noticed something. He noticed that this guy was throwing the big fish back and keeping the little ones. He ran over to him and he said, "Sir, I love to fish myself, and I sometimes catch a lot of fish, but I've never seen anybody throw the big ones back and keep the little ones. Why on earth are you doing that?" The fisherman sadly shook his head. He said, "Man, I hate to do that, but I don't have any choice. You see, all I've got is just this little old bitty frying pan." And you see, that's probably a lot of people think all they've got's a little old bitty frying pan. And so when they get a great idea, like curves, some people would say, "Oh, Lord, don't give me such a big one. All I've got is just this little old bitty frying pan." Well, the reality is, you gentlemen are both manufacturing frying pans because your dreams have become their dreams. People love to be part of something big. So when the big ideas came to you, instead of saying, "Oh, no, Lord, don't give me such a big one," you said, "Thank you, Lord, that's one I can use." A lot of times they say, besides if the idea is any good, somebody else would already have thought about it. That's one of the great fallacies of life. Every new thing that comes out, somebody had probably thought about it earlier on. But the ones that put it into action, they're the ones who get the results. They really do. So yes, those dreams are important. The big frying pans are important, and we need to keep handing them out to the people we work with. We need to let them catch part of our vision. Our own mission statement is to be the difference maker in the personal, family, business, professional, and spiritual lives of enough people to make a positive difference in the world. Companies we've been privileged to work in, I've noticed that the CEOs, the leadership, takes a personal interest in what their people are doing. Each of you have given me examples and stories about somebody who said and did this, somebody who said and did that, and it's a direct result of your personal interest in what they were doing. That's the key to change right there. Relationships are just so critically important. Dr. Dean Ornish of Harvard did a 20-year study, and he found that your relationships with people you love is more important to your physical health than the foods you eat, the exercise program you're on, or even the genes which you have inherited. So when you personalize it, that's the reason I believe for so much of your success in what you're doing. You're involved. You're involved.
I personally feel like my passion never gets accomplished. It just keeps growing, because it keeps me mentally and physically sound and well, and so it allows us to focus on you know, like you said earlier, getting up to the light and then seeing even farther down the road.
Yeah.
And so for the folks that I have the opportunity and blessed to work with, I think that's the common trait that we share.
No question about it. And when passion is born, you really get a far more excited person. When an average person does an incredible job, you can give passion the credit. Founders of this country were passionate in their belief in their freedom. The scientists who've done so many things, they had a passion for what they were doing. You have passions for what you're doing. You have passions for what you're doing. I have passion for what I'm doing. Passion is something that can be transferred. When you have that passion, other people see it and say, you know, I like that. I got to develop that passion. And the more you know about what you're doing, and the more you love what you're doing, the more the passion grows, and the more people see it. And as one person said, I set myself on fire, and people come to watch me burn. When they see your passion, they want some of it.
The quality of being dependable, how important is that in a person's success and their relationships?
Well, one of the things dependable does is reduces a lot of stress. If you know when somebody says that I will be there, they will, that I will do this, and they will, that gives you a considerable amount of comfort in the relationship, and that's a stress reducer within itself. Again, I go back to my wife. I know that I can absolutely depend on her to do what is right. I know that I can depend on her to support me. The first few years of our marriage, we had some very difficult times. In one 5-year stretch, I was in 17 different deals, and yet during all of those times, not once did I ever hear her say, sure, it'd be nice if we had some more money, or if we had a little better balance in there. It was always, you can do it. Tomorrow is going to be better. And then she said the two things that ring my bell to this day. I love you, and I believe in you. Having a cheerleader cheering me on every day and then praying for me at night made a huge difference in my career and what I was able to do. Kind of on the humorous side, you know, Walt Garrison was the running back, or the fullback for the Dallas Cowboys, or running back. He was in the backfield. And the joke they tell about Walt said, you know, if you needed 2 yards, you could absolutely depend on Walt. He'd get it for you. If you needed 5 yards, you could depend on Walt to get you the 2 yards. And that's not the kind of dependability we're talking about, but it does make the point that if you have a need and that is met, your confidence and peace of mind grows as a direct result of that. And people, when they're dependable, their reputation then is enhanced, their opportunities grow, their performance is dependable. And so down home we used to say that if that feller tells you it's going to rain, you can set your tubs out, because it's going to rain. A wonderful compliment that said, here's a person whose word means something.
Zig, when we stop from time to time and do a little checkup from the neck up, as I've heard you say in the past, what can we do and what kind of questions can we ask ourselves to determine our self-worth and how we're progressing and where we need to focus?
Well, when you start talking about self-worth and focus, they're so intertwined, because your focus determines to a degree your self-worth, and your self-worth will determine to a large degree your focus. And when we focus on something, and I mentioned earlier that genius is the ability to focus on the issue at hand, and you feel good about yourself. One of the reasons and things I talk about in the day before vacation is when you perform that way, at the end of the day, you feel so good about what you've done that many times, instead of waiting until the next day to start the vacation, you literally will say, you know, I just feel so good, why don't we go ahead and do it right now? And one of the things that we need to understand as individuals about our self-worth, we're not measured by what we are capable of doing compared to what somebody else does. We're judged by what we are able to do with the ability that God has given us. One person might have a performance here, and that's fabulous. But if a person with infinite or greater ability performs at that level, that's a sad situation. Unrecognized, undeveloped, unused ability is one of the great tragedies of life. One of the great philosophers made the observation, it was Emerson, who said, what lies behind you and what lies before you are tiny matters compared to what lies within you. Somebody said, I believe it was Oliver Wendell Holmes, who said, the tragedy in America is not our waste of natural resources. The great tragedy is the waste of our human resources, our own abilities, so that many people do go to their graves with their music still in them. That is a great tragedy. And I think as leaders, and of course you recognize that beautifully, as leaders, it's your ability and commitment and responsibility to point out to that person and let them see themselves as people of value and people who really can do things. And the more you encourage them and believe in them, that belief is transferable. So it's a very important factor in the development of that self-worth.
You talked earlier about making an appointment with yourself, and I know one of the things I do is I make an appointment with myself every morning when my family's still asleep to get up and get my workout in, so I don't cut into my family time and those sorts of things. But it gives me a little sense of self-worth and success before I ever get out of the house to start the day. So, you know, those little success, I guess what I'm saying is you can set yourself up for little successes early on in your day and your week and your month that will allow you to constantly build the self-worth.
Yes, it does, because that self-worth is directly tied to what you're able to accomplish with the ability that you have. And as I say, that is a very significant point.
What would you say is the biggest factor in assessing your worth?
Well, let me take it from a left-handed approach or a negative approach to begin with. The theory of evolution has been, in my judgment, the most devastating single thing that has hindered and hampered so much of what we do. You know, they tell us that man is just an animal, that, you know, we come through this long line of evolution, come out of the mud and the slime and all of that sort of stuff. And little Johnny is told, you know, that that's where he came from. His ancestors swung from trees and all of that. Well, to be honest, some of my ancestors might have swung from trees, but they were swinging from the neck and not their tail. Well, anyhow, when a youngster is told, you know, that you are, you know, this is what your background is, you're an animal, then we seem to be amazed when they act like animals. On the other hand, a child is told, you're created in God's own image. He sent His Son to die for you. Your value is beyond, you just can't even think in terms of how valuable you are. What would a loving parent take for one of their children? If they're a Christian, there's not enough money in the world to buy that child. And when that child knows that they're that valuable, and one of the things I've done with children to increase their value is to make them feel better about themselves, and I do this regularly. As a matter of fact, one of my proudest trophies was a little paperweight given to me by two youngsters with whom I did this. They were in the church, and I do this pretty regularly. If a child is somewhere 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and nobody but the parents are around, I walk up to the child and I say, let me look you over pretty good. And I'll look at him and I say, now turn around, I want to make certain I'm right, because I can do something that I've never met anybody else who can do this. They said, oh, what is it? I said, I can spot a winner a mile away. I've never been wrong. I want to make certain I'm right. So I look at that child. I said, shake hands with me. A little harder. Yep, no doubt about it. You are a winner. And if anybody ever asks you what you are, here's what I want you to say. I'm a winner. And I want you to give it that. I'm a winner. Now let me hear you practice. And the kid, you know, I'd say, no, a little bit more, a little bit more. And I said, your mom and dad will be telling you this and reminding you of this every day. Never will I forget an experience when we went out to Utah, where I spoke recently. And I did that with one of the youngsters. And we were riding up in the chairs, you know, that take you up to the top of the mountains. It wasn't snow season, but that's what we were doing. And this youngster coming down met us, and he said, "Hey, Zig, I'm a winner." I said, "That's exactly right." Did that to a child in Atlanta. And a couple of months later, I was back over there. My goddaughter was with me that day. And some lady was talking to her. And the lady said it was almost as if Zig could see into his soul. It was the mother of this little boy. He wrote me a letter. He's in about the 2nd grade. And he said, "You know, I am a winner." The mother was telling my goddaughter that it meant so much because his father had abused him considerably. Change that picture, the image he had of himself. When we encourage people, when we refer to them as what they are, born to win, when we let them know they were created in God's image and the love He has for them, nothing elevates that child up as much as knowing that.